Hey everybody, Rice here. We're going to take a second and look at the physics course just to get oriented and see what it is that you should be doing at this point in the quarter. So as you get started looking at this content, you'll see in Schoology that there's a whole bunch of units that are laid out for you, and that there's several things going on. One of the first things to look at is the unit structure. And you can see that the units are labeled U0, U1, U2, U3, and so forth. But for us, we're going to start off with U1. The intro unit is just some of those background things that you might need for a course. But when you're really ready to get down to it, you want to go straight to U1, the 1D kinematics unit. Now, when you're in a unit, there are several folders. You can see here there's textbook resources. We have two textbooks that you can access here. There's the Holt textbook, which is the traditional one that every physics student in Mayfield uses. Then there is the OpenStax textbook, which is a free online textbook that you can take a look at. I've got it open over here. This is all the things, this is maybe the intro. Here's the one-dimensional kinematics page. And so you can see there's a bunch of info on here. It's got sections and things that are all the same ideas as the Holt book, which we're used to in physics, but it's just presented a little bit differently. You can see this is a PDF. The other one was built for the web. They're both equally good and helpful for as we go through things. Now, that is reading the textbook. I recommend that you start any unit by reading the textbook, taking a look at what's going on there, because reading is the best way to learn independently. There's tons of videos you can watch also, and that could help for some people, but reading is a solid time-tested technique. Uh, if instead that doesn't quite work for you and you'd rather have some online resources, here's two. There's the Online Physics Classroom and Khan Academy. These are both great ways to explore these concepts of one-dimensional motion. So you can click through here. The Khan Academy videos are especially good, and a lot of the times for physics, they even have some quizzes and practice problems to work your way through if you're looking for something. So there's that. Uh, let's see, down here you've got some of my more traditional things, like here are the notes that I've used in past years. Here's the chapter 1 vocabulary and a summary of the chapter that's there. This thing that you see down at the bottom, this test, is really just a placeholder assignment. It's a place where I'll be able to put your grade for the test so that it transfers over to Infinite Campus, and it lets me put the test over here onto the workflow for when things are due. And so you can see over here, this is the calendar for the course. It's got all the stuff that you need. And so if we're just cruising through, we've got these quizzes. Quizzes you can join down here. There's a link down there for some more info. But the quizzes are formative, so they're ways to check to see how you're doing with the metric system and acceleration. They don't count for points, so that takes the stress off a little bit. Here's an assignment that says you should read about 1D kinematics. It's again linking you back to the books. And then one of these things that comes up next are all of these. These are grouped together, and they're all due on September 3rd, which is the day before what would be the test date if you're trying to keep on schedule. And these are each of the homework assignments. So the first two are Alberts. There are 12 Albert questions in each. And if you get 8 or more correct, you get full points on those Albert assignments. You have as much time as you need for these, and it'll show you the answers after you take a look at the questions. So there's a lot of value to those Albert questions. They're very good. I hand select them from all of them that are available, and I would recommend taking your time, making sure that those go well. Next up are the typers questions, and we can go into practice problems and try and see them this way. Typers questions like these are all, let's click into here, see where this goes. These are a series of PDFs. So you can see that these are selections again, where you can open up these, and these are sort of ranking tasks. So for this, what I'd like you to do is to take a look at each one of these ranking tasks and try and see how it goes. I want you to do a little bit of a write-up. You can do this with a partner, but I want each of you to write up sort of your logic for how these are ranked. And just showing me that, either submitting some photos of it when you submit this assignment, or actually physically showing me the notebook. Those can be perfectly legitimate ways to say that you've done the typers. But I want you to really have thought about these 5 things in order to move on. Going back. The other assignments here, we can take a look at the Holt book problems. Now these book problems, we come down to practice problems. These are what I would have traditionally assigned if you were in my physics class prior to the option. So these homework problems are the ones that come right out of the whole textbook. They are very similar to the kind of questions that pop up on the test, and so these are sort of a step in the right direction. These are the best kind of homework problems. You should complete at least 7 of them of your choice. You need to submit evidence of that, sort of like the typers in a notebook for this to be graded, just so that I can see that you've been working on it. Because really, what I want to see is your effort. I've said for years, and I'm going to continue to say it. I don't really care what the answer to these questions are. I know what the answers are. I want to see your work when you have a question or when you have a problem, so that I can see that you've thought through it, and I get a window into what you were thinking as you solved that problem. So your work is by far the most important part in a physics class, which is probably something you're hearing in your math classes as well. So coming back to this, looking at the 1D unit, we've made it through the homework. The last thing is probably the lab work. So as we take a look at the lab work down here, there are 4 labs for this unit, which is kind of a lot. Normally there'll be less than this, but some of them go pretty quickly. So one of them that you can start off with is finding the local acceleration due to gravity. And I would recommend strongly that you try and find your own procedure for this, that you're going to need to define it. If you open up the assignment, you have an assigned Google Doc, that's what it's going to ask you to do. And I would encourage you to take a look at the equation sheet. This is the 2019-2020 equation sheet. And look at the kinematics section, which is where you're working right now. And through these equations, you should be able to figure out what is the acceleration due to gravity. Now, I would say take a look at what you can and can't possibly measure, and then try and solve for acceleration from that. So you may want to take a look at an equation like this one and see if you could figure out the acceleration due to gravity in the room, if you could measure an object that's falling, for how far it falls, what's its starting velocity when it falls, and how much time does it take to fall. And you'll need to be double careful with the amount of time that it takes to fall, because any error that you have in measuring the amount of time for fall, even just a little error, gets squared. So that means it's a big impact to your answer. So take a look at things like this, whether it's that equation, or you might find another one of these works well for you, or something else around here. There's lots of options for how you could complete that, and sometimes with lots of technology, sometimes with very little technology. So there's plenty of interesting ways to think about that particular lab. The next lab is the meter stick drop, and here's a video of what I mean. You can see that there are people holding a ruler. One person holds a ruler right in the hands of another, just above the fingers, and then they let it drop. It's not the same person holding and catching. It's got to be different people so that your reaction time is tested. But that way you can see they're putting on display how many inches it fell, or you do how many meters it fell, how many centimeters it fell, and then you can use that to back calculate how much time it took for you to go between seeing the ruler falling and then and then catching it. And so the amount of distance that it passed is going to tell you about how much time it took for you to respond to that falling meter stick. So that's interesting. The next one is going to require a lot of lab equipment. So this has got a relatively long lab set of instructions, and you're going to need to use a PhotoGate, which you probably used during your freshman year in Mayfield. Uh, and so it may take a second for you to remember how to use those, but they will be helpful to get you going in the right direction. I'm going to make sure that I bring those down right away to the uh, option hall on Wednesday of this week, which would be the 28th. And so then we can work on those PhotoGate labs. It's probably going to be something that sits down in the option hall on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. So you'll have until Friday to have all this lab equipment finished and taken care of. The last lab has to do with the mousetrap car that you completed. So this is where the video you took of your mousetrap car is going to become useful. And you'll want to take a careful look at that that video to build a position time graph. I'm going to make another screencast on how to do that because it's an interesting technical challenge that it will just go much easier if I show you how to do it and then you build it from your own video and your own data. So I'll be helping you along with that one pretty soon. and we'll take a look. Now in the formatives, I've got these quizzes. I'm also probably going to fairly soon, making sure that we have a week or so before the test, which means by maybe Wednesday, I'm going to put an old version, a very old version of a 1D kinematics test in this formative assessment folder. And that way you can just take a look at what a test looks like in physics, because a lot of people don't know, they're unsure. Uh, for us, they're usually about 20 multiple choice questions that cover the concepts and not a lot of math, maybe a little bit of a basic calculation, but then the real problems part of the test comes with 3 or 4 written response questions. And again, I'm going to show you an example so that you don't feel like it's a brand new surprise when you get to the test. Uh, but just something in the formatives that gives you an idea of what's coming up. And generally, that's what the formative assessments are there for, is a way for you to check and see how's it going, what are you looking at for an assessment, and how are you doing against all of those standards. I think the formatives do that really nicely, and then the practice problems or homework do that really nicely. So that's pretty much it for our little unit intro here for Unit 1. And I just wanted to show this to you so that you could get a sense for what it is that you should be doing and kind of the order to go after it. If I were in your shoes, I'd say first take a look at the textbook, then maybe the notes. After that, peruse the online resources if it still isn't making sense. Then I think I'd get to work with practice problems and lab work. And then the last things I would do would be some of these formatives and then wander my way towards the test, trying to ask any questions that I need, making sure that I have what I need to have so that I'm ready to go and that I could take the test on time. So that's the strategy. Good luck, guys, and I'll see you in the option hall.